Bauer and the board of the Lori S. Bauer Foundation for Sudden Loss for their generous support of this program. The foundation was established by Lori's friends and family in her honor to give help, healing, and hope to children and families that have suffered a sudden loss or crisis. Thank you for helping us to support those who are grieving. We will now review our program. Rabbi Joe Ozarowski will begin the program with a Jewish reflection. We will then welcome Laura Pawlowski to share reflections on her grief journey. Then Leah Shefsky will present thoughts on the grief process and coping with loss. We will then invite Rabbi Michael Davis to share some additional music. After this, Rabbi Joe will lead us in remembrance of our loved ones. At the conclusion of our formal program, we will invite you to join a smaller breakout room conversation with JCFS staff. This will give you a chance to share and be in community. The groups are optional. Feel free to leave after the formal program if you wish. And a couple other announcements before we begin. Please keep yourself on mute. We are recording our presenters and PowerPoint slides only. The identity of all participants is kept confidential. If you want to communicate with the JCFS staff person during the presentation, please send me a message on chat. And so tonight, we will learn more about our grief. And as the writer Helen Keller reminds us, we bereaved are not alone. We belong to the largest company in all the world, the company of those who have known suffering. We are here for ourselves, and we are here for one another. We hope that our time together will help you feel more supported. So now we will begin our program with some words from Rabbi Dr. Joseph Ozarowski. Rabbi Joe, as he is affectionately known, is a board-certified chaplain and rabbinic counselor at JCFS Chicago, where he leads our Jewish community chaplaincy program.
Thanks, Marcia, and good evening, everybody. First of all, before I begin the reflection, I wanted to just thank all of you for being here this evening and offer my deepest condolences to you on your losses. My heart goes out to you. It's not easy to come and join a group of strangers and give up an hour or so of your evening to come to a group like this online. We're grateful that you are here. We want to reach out to you and let you know that we want to share your sense of loss and maybe give you a few thoughts and things that will strengthen you and give you comfort and healing as you move forward in the grief journey, as all of us do or will do at some point, because that is the nature of human life. An anonymous wit once said, an optimist is a person who starts a diet on Thanksgiving. I mention this because Thanksgiving is coming. Neither November nor the Jewish month of Cheshvan is a month of Jewish holidays, but many of us think of Thanksgiving as a kind of a Jewish-y holiday because it certainly is not. It's not like Christmas. It's not non-Jewish in the sense of its origins. It's something that we all kind of share with each other. It's a very beloved, wonderful sense of a holiday. We've learned, of course, in recent years that the origins of Thanksgiving with, the pilgrims and the nice Indians who come, the Native Americans come and share a meal. It wasn't that simple. It wasn't that clean. But the idea of a holiday that celebrates giving thanks is an important one to ponder. We also can say, however, that the historical origins of Thanksgiving are in a Jewish holiday. It's actually the holiday of Sukkot, the holiday of what's often called Tabernacles, which we just celebrated a couple weeks ago at the end of October. Sukkot is the harvest festival in Judaism. It's also the festival that recalls how our people were protected by God's providence during the years of wandering, the 40 years of wandering in the desert between slavery in Egypt and the promised land of Israel. And we celebrate that with rituals like the building of a sukkah, a hut filled with a thatched top that we take our meals in to show gratitude towards God for the harvest, for the changing of the seasons, for nature, for the world around us. So therefore, how do we talk about Thanksgiving, which is based on Sukkot? I think it's not just a question of parades or a question of football games. Good food, no one will quibble with good food, but it really is an attitude of gratitude that we're talking about. And what is gratitude? Beyond the common sense part, which is the thanksgiving, the giving of thanks, it's also considered a positive emotion. It's a thankful appreciation. It recognizes the good stuff in life. It really is just a way to recognize what's good in our life. It's a way of expressing it in thought, word, deed, writing, experience. There are many ways to express Thanksgiving. And I think it's important as we go through the grief journey to take a moment to enjoy the moment, a moment to enjoy the moment by giving thanks. The interesting thing about Thanksgiving, whether it's within a grief situation or just in general, is that it has beneficial physical effects and emotional effects. There are physical benefits, health benefits, as well as mental health benefits. There is statistics, there's research out there that talks about how an attitude of gratitude helps us sleep, helps us with our stress and our anxieties. It lowers our blood pressure. It enhances our immunity. It enriches our relationship and gives us a general approach to life satisfaction. And there are many ways to do it. It can be something that's internal, just inside of your heart, inside your brain, inside your soul. It could also be physical actions, journaling, how you sense things, prayer, how you experience life. I think that there are many levels which we can express this, but especially the commentaries on the research suggest that especially at a time like Thanksgiving, one shouldn't overdo it and make it the only emotion. Certainly in a grief situation, that would be good advice. But at the same time, within our grieving, when we think about and experience the loss of a loved one, a parent, a child, a spouse, someone else who is close to us, however you define loved one, to know that it's not so easy to be grateful or an optimist as in the story or to give thanks. And so we're not told to overdo it. The advice we often give at holidays is do it your own way, keep things that you'd like to keep. You can change things that you'd like to change. Routine and structure are helpful, but don't be slavish to it. That's certainly, it's true on major Jewish holidays. It's true in secular holidays, certainly true of Thanksgiving. At a time of loss, we're feeling many feelings. There's no one way to feel the loss, but there may be some sense of sadness. Um, but one way to face it and move forward is to find something in the relationship that we can feel grateful for, keeping in mind that when a loved one leaves this world and goes on to wherever they're going on to, I'd like to say the afterlife. I personally believe in one, but I've never been out there to come back and tell you about it. So wherever they are, the relationship still continues. It's different. It's not the same as when they're here, but it's possible to note the relationship as being there, communing with them, talking to them, writing to them, whatever seems to work. And within that, to find things within the lives that we had, the relationships for which we can be grateful. For some people who had lovely relationships, that's easy. Sometimes the relationships are complicated. If you can find something to be thankful for in the relationship, even complicated, then do so. And if not, there may be other things to be grateful for within the context. There's no script. There's not for me to tell you what to feel, how to express it, just to offer you some guidance and some strength as we're doing throughout this evening tonight. What can we be thankful for? What can we remember at this time? Everybody can find something somewhere along the way for which we can be thankful and grateful. Roy T. Bennett, who is an author, said, quote, being grateful does not mean everything is necessarily good. It just means that you can accept it as a gift. My wishes for you are that you can find something for which you can be grateful in the relationships for those whom you have lost and with those whom you still have as we move into this Thanksgiving. Thanks very much. And now, um, Now I believe we have our speaker. We're going to introduce Laura Pavlovsky.
Thank you, Rabbi. Good evening, everybody. My name is Laura, and I'm here because I lost my husband, Jerry, 2 years ago. Within a year of his death, I also experienced the unimaginable loss of my 42-year-old daughter-in-law, Steffi, who I was extremely close to. My grief is complicated, complex, and evolving. It has been an exploration of many emotions, and I'm still figuring it out. I've come tonight I've come here tonight to find strength with others who understand and in part to share my story. In the past 2 years since losing my husband unexpectedly, I've been on a journey that has reshaped my life in ways I never anticipated. Initially, the trauma and shock was so all consuming. The first days and weeks felt like a haze, as if I were moving through my own life without fully being present. Simple tasks felt overwhelming, and the absence of his presence in our home and daily routines left an aching void. As time went on, the grief shifted but didn't diminish. I began to understand that loss doesn't go away, it simply changes form. I rode the waves of emotions, sometimes feeling regret, guilt, or anger alongside the deep sadness. I lived in a world of would have, could have, should haves. One of the hardest parts was redefining my sense of self. For so long, we were a partnership, and my husband was my everything. And now I had to learn who I was as an individual again. Friends and family were a comfort in the short term, though I found myself sometimes feeling isolated, as grief is so personal and unique that even those with the best intentions could never fully understand my experience. Over time, I began to find small moments of peace and acceptance. I found that focusing on things that brought me joy, like hobbies, nature, or connecting with others who had also experienced loss, helped. I learned to carry his memory with me, embracing it as part of who I am now. There are still hard days, but I'm learning to live alongside the grief instead of feeling trapped by it. This journey has taught me resilience, and although I would never have chosen this path, I am grateful for the strength I found within myself. I often think that Jerry and Steffi are so very proud of me, and I am proud of myself too. Throughout the pain, I learned that healing is possible by focusing on things that help you move forward, such as self-care, personal goals, or activities that bring a sense of purpose. Grief can feel so completely isolating. So, in meeting other widows through my support group and community activities, I found a great fellowship of women who I can share my emotions with freely, look for support, and once again enjoy laughter. I can be my authentic self. We help each other feel a little less alone in the world, and we laugh together. Healing looks different for everyone. For me personally, my mantra became say yes. Initially, I accepted all invitations to get out of the house and be in the company of others and to open myself up to new experiences. This was a bold mission, a huge initiative for me, a shy, introverted, and reserved 73-year-old who much preferred living in the shadow of my outgoing, gregarious husband's limelight. Grief journaling at the library and continued at home helped me discover some aspects of closure I struggled with. I learned how to rewire my thinking and could stop myself from going down that all too familiar rabbit hole. I reconnected with a very dear old friend I had sadly lost touch with and have really enjoyed our continued relationship. I volunteered at the Chicago Food Depository and local food pantry, started doing some part-time consulting work, tried Tai Chi, line dancing, chair yoga, and even joined a local meetup group. The latter was an epic fail, but in pushing myself so far out of my comfort zone, I felt the reward of having given it my best try. A valuable lesson was learned in that not everything I tried worked, but I always felt better after putting myself out there. I sometimes cried on the way to a new event or on the way home. It was very hard, but I was learning how to navigate my new life and how to be my own cheerleader. In time, I realized that saying yes to everything was exhausting, and I could not outrun my grief. I needed to learn how to spend time at home by myself. As an introvert, I needed to find the balance of me time and time spent in the company of others. This balance was a better coping mechanism for me, but one I had to discover was right for me. I learned over time as my grief evolved when I needed to push myself to take a first trip traveling with a friend, and when I needed to take a step back and reevaluate what I needed. I felt this was a good sign that I was in a place where I was able to reflect on what I needed to move forward. Jerry and Steffi are in my heart, and I miss them profoundly. I know my grief will never truly end, but I have learned that I can find some light and that healing is possible. I try to be gentle with myself and remind myself there is no timeline for grief. I'm still figuring it all out. I thank you all for holding space for me to share. I'm grateful to be here with people that understand. Thank you.
Laura, thank you so much for sharing your journey with us. It has been really an honor to get to know you through your story. And thank you for sharing a bit about your husband, Jerry, and your daughter-in-law, Steffi, with us. May their memories be for a blessing.
Thank you.
My name is Leah Shepsky, and I'm a grief specialist and chaplaincy coordinator here at JCFS. And I am honored to share some general reflections about grief and some strategies for coping with loss. Grief is a normal and natural reaction to loss. As Dr. Gerald May wrote, grief is not a problem to be solved, nor a difficulty to overcome. It is a sacred expression of love, a sacred sorrow. And although grief is universal, each person's experience of loss and grief is unique. There's no right or wrong way. So some of what I share over the next few minutes may work for you, some might resonate, and some things might not, and that's okay. There are as many ways to grieve as there are people grieving. So some of those ways that grief is manifested could be emotionally. We may express a range of feelings, including sadness and yearning, fear, anxiety, regret, guilt, loneliness, shock, and numbness. I think Laura mentioned most, if not all, of those emotions, and sometimes those emotions may come all in 1 minute. Physically, we may lack energy, feel a hollowness in our stomach and heart, and a tightness in our chest. Cognitively, we may feel confused, in a fog, experience a sense of disbelief, or a sense of our deceased loved one's presence with us. And behaviorally, we may experience crying, sleep, and appetite irregularities, withdrawing socially from others, having dreams of our deceased loved ones, and of course others as well. And spiritually, we may be angry with God, we may question our faith. And again, some of these may feel familiar to you, some might not. And there are, of course, other ways that grief can impact us. We often compare grief to a journey with ups and downs and twists and turns. Grieving is not linear. It's a process. It takes time, and there is no set timeline. Grief is something we need to go through. The path to healing and growth asks us to acknowledge our painful, sometimes confusing, and sometimes contradictory emotions and express them rather than avoiding them. Some of you may be familiar with the children's book, We're Going on a Bear Hunt by Michael Rosen. That conveys this so well. We can't go over it. We can't go under it. We've got to go through it. And we don't move on from grief. We move forward with it, often one step at a time. And over time, we're able to integrate that loss into our lives and carry our grief. And sometimes we may feel frustrated when we think that we're doing better, and then may have a hard day and can't stop crying. Or we may have days where we're feeling great, and we may feel guilt that we're not crying and that we are feeling really well. And these are all part of the process. It doesn't mean that you aren't moving forward or that you're moving too quickly. Again, grief is not linear, and it's all part of this winding journey. And along that winding path are what mourners often describe as waves of grief. These waves can vary in intensity and frequency. Early on, when grief is very raw, the waves can be high and intense and can feel overwhelming and overpowering. Slowly over time, the waves may diminish in intensity and frequency. They get smaller and there is more space between them. The waves can be triggered by something expected, a birthday, anniversary, holiday, yard site, or unexpected, hearing a song, smelling a certain food, or being in a certain location. And for some reason, being in a grocery store has come up so many times that it is often the place of those waves of grief is standing in the grocery store. And although these waves can be unpredictable, the challenge is to recognize that you are, in fact, experiencing a wave of grief, and remember that no matter how much it hurts in the moment, the pain will eventually lessen. And in previous programs, we've included the following tips and tricks for getting through the holidays. And of course, we know that these, we gather with family, we gather with friends year round. And so a holiday season on the Jewish calendar has just passed. And upcoming, we have our secular holidays. And so we know that folks either just did navigate these holidays, some holidays for the first time. Maybe it's coming up, navigating holidays for the first time without your loved one. And maybe this is the 12th time, right? I know not everyone on this call is necessarily newly bereaved, so maybe you've done this before. But it can still be helpful to sort of have some things in your back pocket as you may anticipate gathering with others in the coming weeks. And so while initially these tips may have been seasonal, we know that they can be helpful year round. And so some things that can help us cope with our grief is finding balance between what we may be experiencing internally. I'm sorry, some things that help us cope with our grief as we find balance between what we may be experiencing internally with what may be happening around us as sort of the festive season is in our midst. So the first one is to take care of yourself, be kind and gentle and compassionate. Take care of your physical self, focusing on what you need. And that can change day by day or moment by moment. But asking yourself, what do I need right now? And not only being aware of that, but honoring it. I think Laura spoke really beautifully to this, where she tried something on of saying yes to everything, and it didn't fit so well for her as a person. She took a step back, right? Committing to something or saying you want to do something doesn't mean you're in it for the long haul. Reaching out for support, identifying who is in your circle of support. This may include family members, friends, neighbors, coworkers, pets, support group members, friends from your faith community. People can be there for us in different ways. Some you can cry with, can take a walk with, share a meal with. A pet can remind us that we are needed and offer unconditional love and companionship. And feeling free to ask for help. Others often want to help and may not know what to offer. Grief takes a lot of energy and it can be exhausting. Allowing yourself to connect with others who can support you and give yourself alone time to recharge and readjust. And finding ways to express your grief. By speaking with a trusted friend or family member, participating in a support group or counseling, writing your thoughts or feelings in a journal, as Laura found so helpful, or expressing yourself through art or music or movement, practicing mindfulness meditation, whatever works for you, sharing memories of your loved one, finding a meaningful way to preserve or honor your loved one's memory can provide comfort and healing. And then planning ahead for those special occasions and important dates. You can prepare yourself with coping tools for what you anticipate might be hard. which may include holiday gatherings, special occasions, or other important dates, such as holidays, anniversaries, or yard sites. And this is a big one that I often remind folks of, is have an exit strategy. Think about what you can handle this year and eliminate the pressure about what you should or need to do. Feel free to create new rituals and traditions. It's okay to do things differently, especially while you are grieving. What is important is doing what is right for you. And then also allowing for joyful moments. While we are grieving the death of a loved one, we are also trying to adjust to life after loss. There are still people in your life and things that are special and meaningful to you, even if it seems hard to focus on this at this difficult time. There may be a lot of tears right now, and there can be laughter and moments of joy too. Again, as Laura mentioned, finding joy with other people who get it. Allow yourself to do things that make you feel good. These may include reaching out to others or volunteering for a cause that is meaningful to you or your loved one. Serving others can be very healing. And then lastly, using resources. For additional support, feel free to reach out to JCFS Chicago for chaplaincy, counseling, or a grief support group. Being with others who get it can help you feel you are not alone. The care you invest in yourself now will help you to carry your loved one's memory and legacy forward in meaningful ways. And please know that we are here to walk with you on this journey. You are not alone. Life may never be the same, but we can still learn to live our lives in a full and meaningful way, even after we experience deep loss. Thank you. And we know that sometimes there are no words in grief. You've just heard me talk for a while and others. And sometimes it is simply music that can express our grief and can be a deep comfort. I'd like to introduce Rabbi Michael Davis, who you heard briefly at the beginning, to share some music with us. Rabbi Davis is the founder of Rava Chicago, where he teaches Introduction to Arabic as a Jewish language. He was a cantor in North Shore synagogues for many years. Rabbi Davis is now independent clergy, officiating at funerals and other life cycle events in the general Jewish community. Eliza, I believe we are on slide 14.
Good evening. So I've been clergy in the Chicago Jewish community for some 30 years. We're a very large Jewish community. So you and I may not have yet had the opportunity to cross paths. I'm happy to be with you here today. The reason for this gathering is one that is close to my heart. Not only because as independent clergy, I spend most of my time working with bereaved families, whether it's around funeral services and dedications, or simchas with poignant moments of remembrance, and not only because as a teacher of rabbis, I taught life cycle events, training clergy how to find their own voice in working with bereaved families. But the more immediate reason is that I, like you, have experienced a recent loss. My mother, aged 92, died at the end of December last year. Now, this wasn't a tragic loss by any account. She had been blessed with a longevity. She was ready, as she expressed repeatedly. She had borne her various ailments, but was now on the verge of losing her independence. And that was something she definitely did not want. Finally, her passing was as peaceful and painless as one could hope for oneself or one's loved ones. And I know from my work that that is absolutely not the case in all circumstances. In thinking about my mother, in having this experience, and tragedy or no tragedy, the death of one's mother is a profound moment, unique, unprecedented, and never to be repeated, a milestone if ever there was one. And this brings me to the topic I want to discuss before singing the Psalm 23 and Oseh Shalom. Until just under a year, in all my years of practicing and teaching about bereavement, I had never directly experienced or fully grasped the extent of what I've come to see as a basic problem in society in general. And that problem is the avoidance of death and bereavement, which I think in part explains the sense of isolation when that does fall on us in whatever form that is. I found that neighbors, parents of friends, of the kids, friends, sometimes completely ignored this massive event in my life. And it wasn't they didn't know, they knew. It wasn't that there was some problem between us. No, they simply talked about anything but. And this may have happened to you too. I thought perhaps people needed to see it online. We all live online nowadays. So I wrote up an obituary and my wife posted it on Facebook. She is our social connection. People posted lovely comments or just polite ones, but still, there was no ring either on the doorbell or on my phone. And still, people greeted me on the street with a cheery good morning and talked about anything but. I tried a few times telling people directly when there was an opening, you know, my mother died. Crickets. People went on to other topics. So I got curious. I started to ask around. First, my professional contacts, funeral directors I work with on a regular basis. And from there, directly, gently asking the bereaved families I was meeting with and working with. I found the results astounding. It seemed like everybody had a story resonating with my experience. Families thanked me for naming a problem they had felt, but as they told me, hadn't yet articulated. The denial of death and inability to engage with grief is a thing. So I thought, what can I do in my role as a rabbi? Most of my work is working with bereavement. What can I do to help? And so for the past year, I've taken on the job of training people, addressing the mourners community, sometimes at the funeral itself when appropriate. And here is a shortened version of that training. The Jewish tradition teaches that the way to be in a house of mourning, a shiva, is to be silent. If the mourner cries, console them. If they laugh, laugh with them. And if they say nothing, do not be the first to break that silence. Hard to do in our culture. How to replicate the comforting listening presence outside the controlled space of a funeral or a shiva. How to duplicate the comfort people are giving in their silent presence right now. So I have the formula. It's very, very simple. People say, I don't know what to say. It's 3 words. Here they are. How are you? Now, not, how are you? No, that doesn't work. How are you? The pause at the end is the listening, is the key that the how are you labels that listening as the listening silence, as being present. And we all know how to do that. We've done that with children. We've comforted people. And that's why texting or Facebook or other online communications are not really a good medium. They're good as a stopgap, but they don't fill in for the actual conversation in person or by phone, where there's the element of time that you can indicate you're available. All it takes is a moment. Here's one story. Shortly after my mother died, I ran into the 20-something son of a friend at a bookstore. He asked, how are you? So I told him, and he stopped, put his hand on my forearm and said, I'm so sorry. I could tell he wasn't going to say anything more. He was waiting. He was listening. Into that silence, I felt welcome to speak, and I told him briefly what I just told you. My mother died a good death. And we moved on to catching up on completely different topics. The whole exchange about my mother took no more than a couple of minutes. And the major work I am doing right now is not grief at my mother's death. What I needed was that acknowledgement. Make no mistake, no matter what the mourner says, if anything at all, they will remember, the mourners remember. Every such interaction is noticed and appreciated. Silent presence does make a difference, as I remember that interaction and continue to value it. And finally, to be frank, the wall of silence of some of the people in my life continues to be the major issue around my mother's death that I'm working through. I have a range of tactics. including the one or two times I insisted strategically on an acknowledgement, as in the extended family circle, and that worked. Or shrugging the problem off, or avoiding for now some people because I simply don't know how to be around them. Their determined silence feels to me, to my soul, like an erasure of my mother. And that's not what I'm here for. I know it's not personal. I know it's not their fault. It's systemic. Yet I cannot move on without first acknowledging my mother, Ruth Davis, of blessed memory. So I'd like to sing now Psalm 23, which opens many memorial services, and then ends with a Shalom, which comes at the end of the Kaddish, maybe as a framing of this sacred moment of honoring. And perhaps I'd like to offer, in lieu of those moments when you needed somebody to acknowledge your grief and it didn't quite happen. Adonai roi lo echsar dino deshe yarbitzeni al mei menuchot al mei menuchot ינעלני. נפשי ישובב, ישובב, ינחני ומגלי צדק, ינחני ומגלי צדק למען שמו. גם כי אלך בגיא צל מוות לא יירא רע, כי אתה עמדי. שבטך ומשענתך המה ינחמוני. Let us pray for each other for comfort with your Shalom. I'd like to say, if you know it, sing out loud. And if you don't, fake it along with everybody else. But since I can't hear anybody and I can't see you, imagine you're singing in the shower. We can't hear you anyway, so sing. Ose shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru imru amen. Yaseh shalom, Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael.
Thank you very, very much, Rabbi Cantor Davis, for those beautiful renditions. It gives us something to carry with us in our hearts and in our souls. We're going to take a few moments now to remember the loved ones that we've lost, the people that we are mourning, for which we're grieving this year and always. And so I'm going to ask you to take a moment. If you have a picture of your loved one, by all means, take it out and look at it, meditate over it. If you don't have a picture, then create the picture in your mind, in your heart, in your memory, and think about the relationship. Think about what you've had. Think about what you've done together, the memories, let them come up. Find things for which you can be grateful for at this Thanksgiving season. We'll take a moment and do it silently with a little bit of nigun from Rabbi Davis in the background. We thank you for that, Rabbi Davis. We're going to close with a poem called The Valley, which is reminiscent of Psalm 23 that Rabbi Davis sang for us a few minutes ago. This particular poem was written by Rabbi Karen Kedar. Some of you may know her. She recently retired as the senior rabbi of Congregation BJBE in Deerfield, but not everyone knows she was an author and a poet as well. This is one of hers, and it reads like this. The valley of the shadow of death is a tender place. It is a place of questions and things unsaid, and grace, and love, and depth, and sadness. My heart is open, my breath is gentle, I am tired and sleepless. So I sit a while by the still waters, and you are with me. God is with me, I shall not fear. We want to again thank those who helped make this last hour as meaningful as it could possibly be, to Rabbi Cantor Michael Davis, to Laura Pavlovsky, who shared her story with us, to Marcia Reynes, Leah Shefsky, and Eliza Baker, our team at JCFS, and of course, the Laurie S. Bauer Foundation for Sudden Loss for supporting this evening's program. Now, you will be getting a follow-up email on this. The email will include more information about our support groups at JCFS, various referrals and references, places which you can turn resources, and also an evaluation of the program. The evaluation is really, really important. Your feedback is important to us. It lets us know we're doing what we're supposed to be doing or not, and it's important to the work that we do. So please, we ask you take a few minutes to complete it. If it's in the chat, is it in the chat now? If it's in the chat now, then do it now if possible. We are going to put
In
it
the
in.
chat.
It's in the chat. So please take a moment as we close the program to do it right now. If not, you'll be getting it by mail as well, but it's really important to us. We want to thank you for being here tonight. We again want to offer our condolences to you on your losses. May you be comforted from above. May their memories be for a blessing, for a bracha. And we close the formal part of the program